Welcome, listener, in the shadows. We bring stories into the light. Join me as we explore the encounters no one speaks of and the things that watch from the dark. You were never supposed to see this, but since you have, you might as well wear it. From the vaults of the shadows, a new collection of unsettling apparel and artifacts pulled straight from the stories that were never meant to surface. Soft, worn-in shirts and hoodies that feel like something you dug out of a locked trunk in an abandoned ranger station. This isn't just merch, it's evidence. Third Shift, Chapter 1. Orientation. The smell of floor wax and burnt coffee lingered in the air like a permanent stain. Even with no one around, the building had a scent that clung to the back of your throat. Industrial, tired, and faintly metallic. Alan Drew stood just inside the security office of the Carrion Logistics compound, signing the last page of his onboarding paperwork with a cheap ballpoint pen. The manager, a pale man with eyes like boiled fish, handed him a worn keycard with a faded sticker on the back. Level B3 access only. Alan studied it for a moment. Third shift's quiet, the manager said, almost too casually. Building kind of runs itself at night. You're just eyes on monitors mostly. Alan nodded, sliding the card into his wallet. Any regular traffic I should know about? The manager blinked at him, then smiled. Not really. You'll get used to the noises. Place is old, pipes knock, vents rattle. Don't worry too much if the motion sensors blip now and then. It's the software. Alan raised an eyebrow. False alarms. Sure, let's call it that. The man turned and left before Alan could press further, leaving behind the oily silence of the night shift. The office smelled like someone had microwaved fish in it earlier that week and never opened a window. He turned on the monitors, 9 in total, arranged in a grid, and watched the flickering grayscale feeds light up the room. Most of the facility was storage. Massive concrete hallways with no windows, lined with identical steel doors. Every now and then, a red light blinked at the corner of a hallway where a motion sensor had logged something. Temperature fluctuations, rodents, drafts, maybe. Alan wasn't new to overnight work. He'd done warehouse security in Texas for 2 years before moving north, but there was something different about Carrion Logistics. Something about the silence that didn't feel empty but held, like a lung mid-breath. The night passed slowly. He made his first rounds around midnight, hallways dark, quiet, just the soft hum of the fluorescence above. Occasionally, a cold draft would slide past his legs, like someone had opened a freezer somewhere down the hall. But every door was locked, every room logged. Back in the office, he made a note of a glitch on monitor 6, lower west wing hallway. The screen pulsed static for half a second, then returned to normal. He rewound the feed, nothing out of place, just the camera flickering. At 3:27 a.m., the first oddity occurred. Motion sensor 17 lit up, then 18, then 19. They tracked something, moving through hallway C like a slow ripple. Alan leaned forward, scanning the monitors, but saw nothing. No rats, no shadows. Just the low mechanical hum of refrigeration units beyond the walls. But then monitor 7, a feed from hallway C, showed something strange. A shape. Not a person, not clearly, but the silhouette of something tall, hunched, moving slowly just past the edge of the camera's lens. It was fast gone in a blink, but Alan knew what he saw. A suggestion of backward-jointed legs. Something bent wrong at the torso, arms too long. He paused the footage, rewound, frame by frame, nothing there, nothing he could prove anyway. Alan sat back in the office chair, watching the hallway feed long after the sensors went dark. The fluorescent hum took on a new tone, less electrical now, more like breathing. And far off in the audio feed, just a blip of it, maybe 20 seconds long, there was a soft, wet clicking, like joints moving in ways they weren't meant to, or something imitating the sound of walking. Chapter 2. The Breach. Alan returned to hallway C during his 4 a.m. round. He told himself it was just to check the cameras, a routine inspection, but something about the way the air felt inside the corridor told him otherwise. It was colder here. No, not colder, emptier. The difference was subtle, like the walls had forgotten how to hold sound. His boots echoed in a way they hadn't the night before. Louder, slower, like the hallway was trying to repeat him rather than respond to him. The motion sensor overhead gave a single red blink as he passed beneath it. He stopped, looked up. It blinked again. Alan turned slowly in a full circle. There was no wind, no reason for a sensor in a sealed corridor to trigger. Yet it did again, and again, blinking like a metronome, syncing itself to what? His breathing. He exhaled and the light blinked. He held his breath and it still blinked. Alan pulled out his flashlight and swept it down the length of the corridor. Nothing, but the smell hit him before the sound. It wasn't rot. Not exactly. It was warm but sour, like meat left in a hot trunk. Organic, damp, like the breath of something that didn't understand how lungs were supposed to work. Then the clicking returned. Soft, deliberate. Coming from beyond the far security door, the one marked authorized personnel, only level B access required. He approached it slowly, hand brushing the card reader. The red light blinked. He tried his keycard. Access denied. But the clicking continued on the other side, perfectly steady. It wasn't quite footsteps and not claws either. It reminded him of how dogs sometimes walk on hardwood, scrabbling, sliding, but rhythmic. Then something slid under the door. Alan jumped back. A single sheet of paper, yellowed and damp at the edges, curled on the floor like it had been soaked in brine. He stooped and picked it up with the corner of his sleeve. No writing, just a handprint, too long-fingered to be human, stamped in something that looked like blood but shimmered like oil under the flashlight beam. He backed away from the door, heart pounding in his chest. Back in the office, he checked the badge access logs. No entry since 9:13 p.m., no other staff on site. He filed an incident report, anonymous, just in case, flagged the camera feed, and saved the audio file to a private flash drive. Whatever this was, it wasn't faulty wiring. It wasn't a raccoon. This was something else. By the time dawn began to lighten the sky, Alan felt like the building was watching him. He hadn't seen the shape again, but he felt it, between the walls, in the ducts, the way the elevator doors seemed to hesitate before opening. The halls of Carrion Logistics no longer felt hollow. They felt occupied. Chapter 3. Fragments on the monitor. Alan arrived 15 minutes early for his next shift. The parking lot was empty, except for the usual delivery rigs parked in the back lot. Their trailers sat dark, inert, except for one. Trailer 19. The refrigeration unit hummed unnaturally loud, a constant thrummum that made the pavement vibrate faintly under his boots. He lingered in the car longer than usual, staring at the rows of windows above the loading dock. They were all dark except one. One single office light was on, barely lit, flickering like a candle caught in a draft. There shouldn't have been anyone in there, not at this hour, not on this floor. That particular wing of the warehouse had been under renovation for the past 3 months, according to the memo. Still, the light flickered. He blinked, and it was gone. Alan climbed out and scanned the lot again before heading inside. The door gave its usual beep when his ID badge scanned. The scent of cleaning fluid hit his nose, heavy and acidic. It covered the building's usual plastic and dust smell with something sterile, desperate. At his desk, he checked the incident report he'd submitted the night before. It had been marked received. Nothing else. No follow-up, no phone call, not even a see-me note from Beckett, the floor supervisor. Something about that felt worse than being reprimanded. It felt dismissed. He flicked on the camera grid and leaned back, sipping burnt coffee from the breakroom machine. All 32 cams blinked online. Still, empty. Until camera 17, loading bay lower stairwell movement. He leaned forward. A blur of motion zipped past the stairwell landing, too fast, like a coat being dragged by someone just outside the camera's view. He rewound, slowed it to 1/4 speed. Frame by frame he saw it. A figure, tall, slender. Its limbs moved awkwardly, almost too slowly, while the body zipped past at a speed that should have blurred everything. No face, no clothing, just pale skin, or something mimicking it, stretched over angles that didn't look right. Its right arm dragged behind it, bent wrong at the elbow. Alan froze the frame where the head should have been and zoomed in. Not a face, not even a mask. Just impression, the suggestion of eyes, or holes where eyes might be if it ever needed them. He swallowed hard. and hit save. Then a ping. Camera 4, main lobby vestibule, a new alert. He clicked over, expecting another glitch, maybe a stray moth caught in the infrared. Instead, the lobby was different, dimmer than it should be. The overhead fluorescence flickered, not failing, just unwilling. The front door, clearly latched moments before, was now slightly ajar. The wind outside didn't move it, no draft. It was like someone had opened it and then stopped just inside the threshold. Then came the sound, not from the feed. From behind him, click, click, slow, heavy, not feet, not nails, something between the two. He turned and the hallway behind his desk was empty. The sound stopped. He waited. Every hair on his body stood on end. He could hear his own pulse in his teeth. He turned back to the monitor. The camera grid was black, all of them, offline. Then a flicker. Camera 3, mailroom east, came back on. Something stood just outside the edge of the frame. Alan leaned in, heart hammering. Its shoulder was visible, a sliver of arm, the upper chest. The limb moved, breathing maybe, or shifting its weight. Then something flashed, a hand, pressed flat against the lens for exactly one frame. A hand like a human's, but too long. The fingers terminated in blunted, grayish tips, like bone and skin grown over each other. One word appeared on the screen for less than a second. Not an overlay, not a computer alert. It was written in dust on the camera lens. Stay down. The feed cut again. Alan stood, grabbed his flashlight and walked to the hallway, heart in his throat. Silence. Nothing stirred, but he could feel something had moved. The air felt heavier. The ceiling panels buzzed faintly, vibrating like the tail of a rattlesnake. He didn't check the mailroom. He didn't check the stairwell. He locked the office door and sat back at the console with the flashlight across his lap. The monitor feeds dark and hissing. At 5:33 a.m., the camera feeds returned on their own. All normal, all empty, except camera 21, breakroom storage, which now showed a new detail. The mop sink faucet was running. No one had entered the breakroom all night. Chapter 4, Things That Walk After Midnight. The mop sink was still running when Alan clocked in the next night. It hadn't been turned off during the day shift. That fact struck him as odd. Beckett, rigid by the book Beckett, would have made a note of it, even sent out a building-wide memo titled Proper Water Usage Protocol. But there was no memo. There was no sign anyone had noticed the faucet at all. Alan tightened the valve shut himself. As he stood there in the cramped breakroom storage closet, the silence after the hiss of water was deafening. It felt like holding your breath and expecting a voice to answer back from behind the shelves. He stared at the drain for a few seconds. The water didn't circle down immediately. It sat there, trembling at the lip, as if resisting the pull. Then it vanished all at once, too fast, sucked away. He didn't mention it in his log. 9:07 p.m. back at his desk, Alan reviewed the footage from the previous night again. Nothing. The stay down handprint was gone. Rewind, pause, frame by frame. Nothing but static or empty hallways. No figure in the stairwell. No hand against the mailroom camera. It was as if the building had decided to forget. But Alan hadn't. He clicked open a folder on his desktop, one he'd made discreetly that morning at home. Incident Footage Archive. He copied what little he'd captured the night before. The blurred stairwell figure, the handprint frame, faint, distorted, and a still image of trailer 19 from a few nights ago, its door ajar, something dark just visible inside, like the tip of an elbow or a hunched back. He marked it, observed presence, possible entity. He didn't like calling it that. Entity. It made it sound deliberate, intelligent. 10:44 p.m. camera 6, north loading dock triggered motion detection. Alan leaned in. A figure was walking the back lot. Human silhouette, average height, no visible clothing. But its gait, it moved like a mannequin being marionetted. Too straight in the spine. No swing in the arms, just steady forward motion. Alan switched to the infrared feed. The figure glowed ice cold, dead cold. He zoomed in and froze the frame. It had no face, not missing, not bloody, just smooth and featureless like a flesh-colored balloon. Then it stopped, right in front of the camera. Alan blinked. It wasn't just standing there. It was angled up. It was looking at the lens. A full 30 seconds passed. Then it raised one hand. A long, stiff-fingered wave, like it was mocking recognition, and then gone. No transition. One frame it was there, the next it wasn't. No blur, no motion. Alan stood up so fast he knocked his coffee off the desk. He ran to the dock. The doors were locked. He pressed his face to the narrow glass inset and peered into the night. The asphalt was slick with dew. Trailer 19 still hummed. Nothing else moved. But he noticed something. One of the yellow-painted safety bollards at the dock's edge had been bent, warped inward, not crushed, pressed, like something with unnatural weight had leaned into it. Alan touched it. The metal was warm. 12:03 am. Alan returned to the office, sat down, reviewed the feed from camera 6. This time it was just grainy footage of an empty parking lot. The figure was gone from the logs. Again, but now a new alert pinged. Camera 12, locker room rear hall motion. He flipped over expecting a rat, maybe a janitor forgetting a swipe code. Instead, he saw himself. Alan, standing at the far end of the corridor, except he wasn't. He was in the chair, watching the feed. But on screen, he saw his own body. Identical uniform. Same scuffed badge. Even the same limp in his left leg from last winter's slip on the ice. Alan's double stood motionless, one hand just resting on the wall, head tilted at an unnatural angle, watching nothing. Then, slowly, the thing on the feed began to turn toward the camera. Alan slammed the power button. The monitor went dark. He sat there, panting. The air was thick, pressed in from all sides. His tongue felt dry against his teeth. The silence stretched. He stood slowly, stepped to the hallway, empty. But at the far end where the camera had shown his double, a scuffed boot print, left facing out right at the corridor's end, identical to his own. He crouched, touched the print, still damp, like someone had just stepped through a puddle outside, come inside and stopped there, and never moved again. Chapter 5. The Trailers That Breathe. Alan waited until his second cup of coffee before he even considered stepping back outside. He stayed in the guard office for another hour, trying to convince himself he hadn't seen what he saw, that the boot print had already been there, that the faceless figure was a camera glitch, that his double in the hallway was just some kind of signal interference, maybe even old footage. You know better. He did. The time stamps were all clean, real time. But what finally pushed him out the door wasn't curiosity. It was the scent. At 1:36 am, he smelled something, like rotting leaves mixed with copper. A kind of sickly, fungal tang, like meat kept just a little too long in the fridge. It filtered in through the air vent. It wasn't strong, but it was enough to get his pulse going. It came from the direction of the lot, from the trailers. He grabbed his flashlight, the heavy maglite, and stepped outside. The air was unusually still. Even the cicadas were quiet. The light above the bay doors buzzed softly, flickering. A moth flapped madly at the bulb, bouncing against the glass like it was trying to break in. Alan made his way to trailer 19. He counted them each time he passed, an old habit. But something was off tonight. There weren't 19, there were 20. 20 trailers lined the back lot, each unmarked, each identical. Rusted wheels, no visible numbers, and sealed cargo doors, except the new one. It was the only one with a number stenciled crudely in black paint on its side. And it was breathing. Not a trick of the light, not heat shimmer. The metal siding of Trailer 0 pulsed ever so slightly, bowing outward then back, like an iron lung expanding under invisible pressure. Alan froze. He scanned the area, half expecting someone to shout at him. A prank, maybe. Some contractor's idea of fun. But no one was out there. He approached, closer, then stopped. The air around Trailer 0 felt wrong, heavy, like the pressure dropped around it. He reached out, touched the metal, warm, too warm, like skin after a fever. And then something inside moved, a scrape, like claws or fingers against metal. Alan staggered back. Something heavy shifted to the left, then settled. Then it spoke. A whisper, low and bubbling, as if filtering through water-damaged speakers. "Hello, Alan." He turned and ran, back across the lot, heart hammering. He didn't stop until he was inside the building again, slamming the service door shut, spinning the bolt. He paced for a long time, too long. By the time he sat again, the warehouse clock read 3:08 a.m. He dared one more look at the cameras. Camera 8, loading dock. There was someone standing outside the bay door. The image was hazy, filtered through fog. Not weather-related, just distortion, like an oil smear on the lens. The figure was facing the building. It was tall, maybe 6.5 feet, thin, not faceless this time, but wearing a mask. An old mask, bone white, elongated jaw, antlers curling upward like twisted roots. The camera flickered. Then the figure was gone. Alan sat back, hands trembling. He looked down at the incident report log. Open page. Blank line waiting. He didn't write a word, because what was there to say? That something in the trailers knew his name, that it waited out there with a skull for a face, that it wanted him to come closer. Instead, he clicked off the monitor, sat in silence, and listened, because from somewhere behind the walls, from the direction of the lot, he could just barely hear it again. Breathing. Chapter 6, Old Logs, Older Secrets. By sunrise, Alan had made 2 firm decisions. He wasn't reporting any of this. He needed answers before the next night fell. The daylight brought no relief. The security office windows glared too brightly against the warehouse floor. Nothing moved, nothing breathed. The trailers looked like nothing more than forgotten hunks of metal again. Even Trailer 0 looked normal. The stenciled number was gone. Alan almost doubted himself until he checked the logs. There was a key file he remembered, buried in a shared network folder that hadn't been updated in years. Incident Reports Archives. He opened it out of habit more than anything. A file structure from another era. Most of the names he didn't recognize, except one. D. Rowland's third shift 2017, 7 years ago. The report was brief but raw. Observed unknown figure between trailers. Height approx. 65. Facially obscured. Approached camera blind spot. Whispered my name through the vents. Hadn't told anyone I took this job. Can't explain that. Quitting, sorry. There was a second file attached. A photo, grainy, black and white, pulled from a corrupted camera feed. Alan had to adjust the contrast, zoom in. The figure, same mask, same twisted antlers. Only this time, it was crouching on top of a trailer, watching the loading dock, watching this building, watching him. He leaned back from the desk, stomach turning. That's when he noticed something strange in the corner of the office. A folded piece of paper, on the floor, tucked under the supply cabinet. It hadn't been there before. Alan bent and retrieved it. No writing, just a drawing, charcoal, smudged lines, an outline of the warehouse, exact and detailed, the trailers, the guard office, and behind all of it, something massive drawn in thick, heavy strokes, a shape that rose above the building like a skeletal tree wearing a face. He flipped it over. On the back, one word. He's underneath now. Alan dropped the paper. He stood there for a long time, unsure what to believe anymore. Someone else had seen it. Someone else had left this behind. Maybe Rowland's never quit. Maybe he was still here, just underneath. And the worst part, Alan could feel it again. That sensation in his chest, like standing on soft earth that wasn't quite soil. A subtle vibration in the concrete floor. Breathing from below. Chapter 7. Below the trailers. Alan didn't go home that day. He sat in his car in the far corner of the lot, engine off, door cracked open to let the early October chill bite at him. The warehouse loomed to the west, casting long shadows over the cracked blacktop. It was silent, always silent, but that silence now felt loaded, like breath held too long. The paper still sat on the passenger seat beside him. He hadn't touched it since reading it. He's underneath now. At 5:43 p.m., Alan went back inside, not through the usual entrance, not through the guard door. He slipped around the back, where the overgrown loading ramp met the slab foundation. Years ago, during a night shift, one of the older guards had shown him something strange. A waste tunnel, he'd said. Goes under the place like a crawl space. For drainage, maybe. I never checked. Alan found the metal hatch behind a pile of broken pallets, the bolts rusted and half-rotted through. When he tugged, it gave with a groan, revealing blackness beneath. The smell hit him first, like water that had gone still and thick with time. Mold, earth. But there was something else in it too, sweet, almost metallic, like rot mixed with copper. He clicked on his flashlight and dropped in. The space below the warehouse was tighter than he remembered. The old runoff channel was barely shoulder width, the concrete slick with condensation and some slimy moss-like growth along the base. Pipes ran overhead, some weeping quietly, others pulsed, and somewhere distant but unmistakable footsteps, not human ones, too light, too fast, as if something ticked when it walked bone against stone. Alan pressed forward. The tunnel dipped lower, curving beneath the warehouse. His flashlight caught glimpses of strange marks in the slime along the walls, scratches in repeating arcs. Curved, sharp, not graffiti, not tool marks, claw marks. He was maybe 30 feet below the main floor when the tunnel split. To the right, a drain grating led back toward the loading bays. To the left, a maintenance hallway that wasn't on any of the maps he'd seen. The left one breathed. He could hear it, air gently exhaling from the darkness, rhythmic, steady, almost comforting in a way that disturbed him even more. He went left. The flashlight flickered. Once, twice, then caught on something. A door. Rusted shut but familiar, the same door that led to the loading dock but reversed. As if he were standing behind the building, even though he wasn't. No signage. Just a small, soot-darkened window. He peered through. The inside was identical to the office. Same desk, same chair, same security monitors. Only the monitors were on, and they showed him not just one feed, all of them. Every camera showed Alan standing at the door looking in. He stepped back in horror. From the other side of the glass, his reflection didn't. It watched him, no flashlight in hand, just wide, glassy eyes. And the grin, long, dry, wrong, it tilted its head. Alan ran. He scrambled back through the tunnel, slipping once, slicing his palm on something jagged in the water. He didn't stop to look. Didn't stop until he was back outside in the cold air, gasping on the gravel. The hatch slammed behind him on its own, and locked. Back in the guard office, everything was the same, almost, except for one monitor. It now showed the tunnel, just static at first, then movement. From the bottom of the frame, a mask emerged, white bone, antlers wide, soaking wet. Then came the text, typed across the top of the screen, "We never left." Alan unplugged the monitors, but the image stayed. Chapter 8, What Watches? Alan didn't sleep that day. Even after the sun came up, slanting through the smudged window of his apartment, he sat in the kitchen with a cold cup of instant coffee, staring at the cracks in the floor. His boots, still stained from the loading bay, were lined up at the door like soldiers. He hadn't taken them off. He didn't want to. The creature, whatever it was, hadn't followed him home, but it had followed him. Of that he was sure. All day the memory of its face, or lack of one, refused to leave his mind. Blank skin stretched too tight, glinting pale under the emergency light. Eyes that weren't there but still looked. He remembered how it moved, shoulders lurching forward first, like it didn't understand how to mimic walking. Like it had seen people walk, and was only doing its best impression. He hadn't even told anyone. What would he say? "Hey, there's something living in the tunnels of an abandoned facility where I make $14.25 an hour to stare at screens and drink expired coffee." That night, he went back to work. He considered calling off, considered it for real. But something about the silence at home unsettled him more. He'd rather be behind the walls. At least there he had cameras. At least there he could see it coming. He checked every hallway as soon as he sat down. All clear. Midnight came and went. Around 2 o'clock a.m., he heard the freight elevator groan again. He turned toward the monitor. Camera 3. The shaft was dark, dead black. Then, with a flicker of static, something moved just past the threshold. Long limbs, elongated fingers, a bend of the spine that no human should make. Alan leaned forward, breath held. The camera cut to snow. He switched to camera 4, the hallway by the west exit. Nothing. Then a soft tap-tap-tap on the door to the breakroom. He froze. That door led nowhere. No one should be there. He hadn't seen anything pass through the other angles. The tapping came again, slow, measured, like a child pretending to knock politely. Tap, tap, tap. He crept to the door, no sound now, no movement. He waited another minute, then opened it. Nothing, no one. He closed it, locked it, sat back down. The monitor for camera 6 came back to life. a single frame of footage, the back wall of the break room, right where he just stood, and on it, carved into the drywall with something sharp and deliberate, "I know you saw me." He quit the next morning, but 3 days later, sitting in a laundromat at 11 p.m., Alan looked up from his folding to see a man in the reflection of the dryer glass. Only the man wasn't there when he turned around, but his reflection still was, watching him from a face that had no eyes. You made it back for now, but the things in the dark never truly leave, do they? They watch, they wait, and perhaps they remember you now too. If you want to hear more, if you dare to listen again, step back into the shadows. Like the video, subscribe, but know this, some doors once opened do not close so easily.